Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Alexis Badenmare. I'm the political director of the Organic Consumers Association. Today I am joined by Todd Wickersham. He is a functional nutrition practitioner, and we're doing the first broadcast today for our brand new Farms Not Pharma campaign. And I just want Todd, hold tight. I want to give a little intro to everybody on this campaign. So if you know Organic Consumers Association and our campaigns like Millions Against Monsanto, you know that we are constantly letting you know what not to eat and how to eat organic so that you can avoid pesticides, GMOs, factory farm foods, synthetic biology, synthetic foods, stuff like Impossible Burger. So, that's what we mostly do. And honestly, that left me personally a little bit confused about what I actually should be eating. When my first daughter, who's 18, was a little kid, I really felt like I could just go through the grocery store and say, we can buy whatever has the USDA organic seal, and that was enough nutrition advice for me. And then 8 years later, when I was raising a second child, I realized that the stores are overflowing with organic, hyper processed, sugary junk foods that are USDA organic certified. And I started to get real confused about nutrition. Plus, I had been a vegetarian for 30 years, and I was starting to hear that, of course, I lost my feeling that I should not eat meat because it's bad for the environment, because I learned how regenerative, organic, pasture-raised meats can be very good for the environment. So I was very, very confused about what I should be eating, what I shouldn't be eating, aside from these basics of being organic. So I figure I'm not alone. There must be people out there, Organic Consumers Association members, who have these same concerns about diet and nutrition. We're trying to raise our kids as healthy as they can be. We're seeing some health issues in our kids, perhaps. And so today I am bringing you all my personal functional nutrition practitioner, Todd Wickersham. So welcome, Todd.
Well, thank you, Alexis. It's great to be here, and it's been great to be working with you over the last year.
It's been so eye-opening. Like I really cannot believe that I made it like 48 years without knowing these basic things, because once you learn them, they seem really basic. But honestly, I didn't know. I'd like to talk about you a little bit so we can introduce you to our audience. So when you and I met, which was, probably it wasn't a whole decade ago, was it?
It was 2015, I think, around
Oh
that
my
time.
gosh, not quite a decade. Not quite a decade, but when I first met you, you were basically a good cause lobbyist, right? You were working on energy policy and climate change issues, and you were very interested in regenerative organic agriculture as a climate solution. You want to tell us more about your background at that time?
Sure. I was doing, I've been an environmental consultant my whole life, pretty much, starting in 8th grade, setting up energy efficiency programs. But my professional life, I did hazardous waste cleanups, and then I spent 15 years in Texas focused on air quality, energy efficiency, and lobbying for those causes, as well as assisting companies do things to improve their environmental performance. A lot of it was focused around clean air, but there was other things associated with community organizing and helping communities in Houston be heard more because they were being impacted by the petroleum industry there. Around the time I met you, I moved to DC and was doing a little bit of lobbying, but I got the bug related to climate and agriculture at that time, and the power of the ecosystem and plants to suck carbon out of the air and put it in the ground where it benefits the environment, helps cool the planet, and helps feed people. And I saw how sort of the industrial way of farming was harming the environment. and putting more carbon into the atmosphere, and making foods that were chemically tainted and also less nutrient dense.
Yeah.
And I know your members are very aware of the benefits of organic foods, and you've done a lot of work promoting the environmental and the climate benefits of regenerative agriculture. So I won't belabor that, but my history, in addition to environmental work, was I had always been passionate about health. Even back in college, studying acupressure and Chinese medicine and massage and different ways of eating. I was one of those kids that in high school was experimenting with a macrobiotic diet, you know. And so I failed at a number of things and gotten unhealthy as well as healthy through different times in my life. And in the last couple of years, I've really gone back into this area of interest by going back to school during the COVID crisis and really focusing on functional nutrition. And that's where we started working together after I experienced that work. So long answer to your question.
No, that's really good. I mean, I would like to go into even more detail because I was reading your bio on your website for the first time. Like, we've known each other for so long, I felt like I knew you. But yeah, so you had experienced some health issues, and yeah, could you talk a little bit about that, about your own personal journey?
Sure. Where do I start? I'll start with in 2007, I was sitting in traffic and a tractor trailer truck hit the back of the car.
Wow.
And while I looked like I didn't have any damage, I did hit my head and I had a minor traumatic brain injury, which sounds worse than it is, but it's basically a concussion.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I had to sell my business in Texas because of that, because it did affect my cognition. And it took me about 2 to 3 years to get really fully back.
Oh, wow.
But during that time, I was forced to study brain health. And anybody that gets in a car accident or has a stroke, talk to your doctor about hyperbaric oxygen treatment. Getting oxygen deep into the brain where there is harm can help with the healing process. Some people think it's more powerful than others, but it's something to look at. And I also worked with ozone therapy and other modalities to help improve my health. And then my father got prostate cancer, and my passion in nutrition and eating well and natural health led me to go deep into different ways to support him through that process. I don't know whether unfortunately or he just chose a different path. He chose to, he was living in New York City, and he chose the path of working with the professionals there who were truly experts in their field. And he also worked on some experimental technologies or pharma technologies, which actually unfortunately shortened his life because it gave him neuropathy, which prevented him from standing and walking, rather than benefiting him from his cancer therapy. But that was his path, and everybody gets to choose their path. We're all individuals, and there's really no right or wrong way. I mean, I have my opinions on what I think is more effective, and other people have their opinions, and I am not a medical doctor. Actually, I should say this right now. I am not a medical doctor, and anything I say today is not going to prescribe, treat, or cure, or provide medical advice. And anything that I say should not delay you from going to seek medical advice or medical care as well. You know, what I do is sort of fill a role that's between medicine and education. It's really more focused on education and helping people understand ways of supporting their health through nutrition and lifestyle changes. So,
okay. And here's a dumb question. I'm looking at your name on the screen, and it says Todd Wickersham, FNLP, CFNC. What does that stand for?
FNLP is functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner.
Okay.
It's a honor or an achievement given by the Functional Nutrition Lab, which was the organization that I did most of my training at, or most of my recent training. And then CFNC is a certified functional nutrition counselor, which comes from the same organization. And the first one was after completing, one module, or not 10 months of work. And then the other was another 3 months of in-depth study. So,
yeah. So I have a question for you. So I know that you had been doing this for a very long time. So you knew about lots of different healing modalities and lots of different nutrition philosophies and practices. Why did you choose functional nutrition?
I do a lot of things based on gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, there's a spiritual side to the work I do, and I used to do some hospice pastoral counseling and things like that. But I was in a place where I was wanting to go back towards health and focus on health. I'd done it as a hobby and supported clients and friends on and off through decades. And sadly, I tended to be one of those people who, if you have this issue, here's your solution. And
right.
that is not really a functional approach to
Okay.
health. I may have given them some useful advice, and I may not have, depending on who they were. But the functional approach is looking at the whole systems, and it's looking at how your body is working. It's we focus on the history of what got you to where you are, your challenges or your goals or your weight or whatever, and we sort of map a path of where you want to go. And it's really me educating my clients on how to get there. And a lot of the work is focused on lifestyle things such as sleep, exercise or movement, a spiritual practice or relationships, hydration, and nutrition, of course. And it's really, there's so much hype on the internet about the next thing, or eat this supplement, or take this powder, or ...
Yes,
and
that's true.
and those may work for some people, but everybody is unique. And the keto diet may work for one group of people. A vegan diet may work great for another group of people. But how do you know? And
right.
what are the commonalities between those? And so my training really focused on the basics and recognizing that everybody is an individual and unique, and educating in ways that can help, like, you make choices that work for your body, which may be different than your husband, who has a slightly different way of eating food and different types of exercise that are good for him. And you have different sleep ways, sleep needs and things like that. So.
When we met last, you were talking to me about some work that you're doing in the community where you live, and you have some very, very basic suggestions for people who are just starting to tune into their health and just starting to want to learn more, make some lifestyle changes for certain health goals. Can you tell us a little bit about that work, and then give us these basics? Like, this is like how you would start with somebody who's not in this organic, natural health and nutrition world, who is just on the ground floor tuning in for the first time to their health.
Sure. There are different ways depending on how much time I'm going to be spending with the person.
Right.
If it's going to be multiple sessions, we have an intake process where I get a lot of their history and I find out their goals, and we develop a customized approach to improving health or supporting their health and wellness. If it's sort of one-off, sort of Q&A type of questioning, or I do a presentation and I have people saying, well, what can I do? I always I try to qualify and not offer any sort of thing that's too difficult, but there's some really common sense things. Um, and it's like, pick one of these. That's usually what I say.
Yeah.
Eat slowly.
Oh.
Slow down. Slow down when you're eating.
Mm-hmm.
Make 50% of your plate vegetables.
Hmm.
And that works for most people. Of course, there's people that have digestive issues that can't break down vegetables well. And there's a small proportion of the population that 50% of the plate being vegetables will not work. But for most people, 50% of the plate's vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Avoiding processed food. If possible, choosing foods that have no label on them. In other words, you're getting it from the produce aisle or the meat department, or you're getting it from a farmer's market, and where it is fresh, whole foods, and you're preparing your meals from that. Sugar, avoid added sugars in all products, and avoid anything that has unnatural ingredients. And sometimes those are ingredients you just don't know whether they're natural or not. But if you can't pronounce it and you really don't know what it is, it's a general rule to avoid those unless you have done some research on the products. I could go on and on. That's the food side. And then we go talk about sleep, and we could talk about other things too.
Right. Yeah. So I guess those things, I guess I probably knew most of those things when I started working with you. I guess the big revelations that I got from you, and it would be different for everybody, right? But I didn't, you gave me a very simple way to put together a meal. And you insisted that it must have fat, fiber, and protein. So where does that come from? Why do we need to have those when we eat? And how does that guide us in structuring a meal?
Let's start talking about breakfast.
Okay.
When we met, you were having smoothies for breakfast, and you were having some things that are considered healthy, but you were hungry shortly after you ate, and you wanted to snack during the day.
Yeah. So I'll let everybody know what I was eating. I had started with what was really awesome, which is the Kelly Brogan smoothie, and you can Google that. But it kind of devolved into like whatever I happened to have, I would stick in a smoothie. So I was skipping, like, she has, like, you put in protein powders and sprouted nut butters and collagen powder. And so hers is, and it's full of healthy fat, like coconut oil. So the Kelly Brogan smoothie, I think, really is a good one. But
Yes.
I had started with, and it has like raw eggs that you put egg yolks into it. So it's like a really nutrition packed thing. But, I started there, and then I got to the point where it was just like, do we have any like non-dairy milk in the fridge and some strawberries? And I didn't stick with the whole recipe, and I was just shortcutting. And so I was basically having like a sweet, or it was either non-dairy milk or raw milk, which are great things, I thought. Raw milk, awesome, very good. But it just wasn't like, it wasn't that nourishing, and it wasn't holding me for the whole day.
Yeah, and the issue with that was that you weren't getting enough protein, and there was too much sugar or carbs in the smoothie. And one of our goals is to get satiety from each meal. And that's where we focus on fat, fiber, and protein in each meal. And it sounds like the Kelly Brogan smoothie really did have fat, fiber, and protein in it.
Oh, it sure did. It's awesome. And I highly recommend Kelly Brogan's books. She's a medical doctor who made it her mission to help people who wanted to get off of their psychoactive medications, which is not an easy thing to do. And one of her focuses is nutrition. So that's just an aside. Go on.
Great. So what we talked about is finding ways where you could start the day primarily with protein and a little bit of fat and fiber. And something that doesn't work for a lot of people because they can't do gluten or eggs, but worked for you was starting the day with an egg on Ezekiel bread and a little bit of butter, and maybe some other vegetable or some other fruit along with that. But that gives you fat, fiber, and protein. And I encourage people to experiment. If you start the day with an egg, if you can eat eggs, and a fiber-rich bread, really Ezekiel bread is really the only bread that I would recommend, because most other breads spike your blood sugar. But a fiber-rich food, you might find that you are less hungry through up until lunch, and you may find that you want lunch later in the afternoon, and because the egg and the fiber and the Ezekiel bread and give you that satiety. And sometimes you find you can eat 2 eggs and you can go even longer. Some people start with 2 and then cut back to 1. But it's getting fiber and protein first thing in the morning and with some fat really gives you that satiety. It also helps you absorb different nutrients as well too. We need fat to absorb some of the nutrients in our food. And
okay, tell us a little bit more about that, because that's something that I hadn't really caught on to. Sorry if I sound like I haven't been listening for a year, but
no.
So how does fat help us absorb nutrients?
So let's go to lunch. Say we're having a salad. And if you make a salad, a fat-free salad dressing, and it can have all the vegetables in the world, and there's no nuts, and there's no seeds or anything in that. Maybe it's apples and lettuce and fat-free dressing. Your body is less likely to absorb the fat-soluble nutrients in those greens.
Wow. Okay.
So it's encouraged to add a little, maybe a tablespoon of olive oil or less, add some nuts, or make a salad dressing with nuts and seeds, and throw an apple in there and some berries and different greens. You can take leftovers from the dinner before, if you have a little leftover meat or a little leftover vegetables, and throw that in the salad. Having a little bit of fat with your salad will help you absorb the nutrients in the greens.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So there are some mentions in the chat here. We've had a discussion a little bit earlier about where people were on the vegan to paleo carnivore spectrum. And you don't promote one or the other. You help people find what they need through this functional approach. But we can discuss that more. And we have my friend Rachel Linden, who says she is an herbalist, which is something I'm super excited about exploring in our whole Farms Not Pharma campaign, because it really is amazing when you start looking into, like, if you realize that you need a certain nutrient and then you just Google the foods that have them, it's really amazing, like how nutrient rich certain foods are and how you can get the thing that you need from whole foods. Like, for instance, just to name an example, since we've all been concerned about immune health over the last 2 years, NAC is something that was, a supplement that a lot of people wanted, and then NAC became very controversial, and FDA threatened to remove NAC from the market. And so, one day I just looked up, I was Googling NAC related to this controversy, and I realized, like, oh, well, it's in capers. I was like, and I love capers. So I just started putting capers on everything. And when I do like cream cheese and salmon on Ezekiel bread muffins, which is one of my favorite breakfasts these days, just like stuffing it with capers. So we'll discuss herbalism. We'll discuss the nutrients in various foods in this campaign. And there's a little note in the chat that says Kelly Bergen has gone totally carnivore for the past 13 years, even with a more vegan husband. So that just shows the whole range in one family of people who really know what they're doing related to their health. And Kelly Brogan is now married to Sayer G. So if y'all are following the the alternative health world, these names. And yeah, so two titans of our natural health world have hooked up, and they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, but they're both nurturing their own health. So all right, so we've done fat, fiber, protein, and quite honestly, I think that I had been so one of the things that brought me to Todd was that my son, who's now 10, has got super chubby during the pandemic. And if you look at my social media feed, you can figure out why. Instagram, like March 2020, it's like every day it's like a picture of him with a great big cake that we made, because I wanted to try to lighten up the mood at that time when the kids got sent home from school because there was a dangerous virus on the loose. And I thought, okay, we're at home together. Let's do fun things like bake cakes. So I have that tendency to sort of find comfort in food. I've passed that on to my kids. And yeah, when we were on lockdown, we ate a lot of stuff that maybe we shouldn't have, and we didn't get out as much. We didn't get as much exercise, and everybody in the family gained weight at that time, except for my 18-year-old daughter, who has that gene hasn't kicked in yet. But I was like that too when I was young, nice and thin without worrying about it. But at a certain point, all of us struggle with our weight. So let's go to that subject. Oh, I was going to say, figuring out, learning from you, the fat, fiber, and protein structure of a meal, plus 50% vegetables, which are fiber, right? So it's like,
Yes.
that's one of the reasons why.
And some,
yeah.
And some protein and some carbs in there too.
Yeah. So when I started to try to fix my family's excess weight, I started just going on various elimination diets, right? So I was like, oh, it must be the carbs, it must be the gluten. And so I made everybody go gluten-free, and it wasn't really changing things that much. And I think that we were probably really fiber deprived. I think fiber what was missing in our diet, because in 2020, when we were at home, we were living with my mom and dad, who were elderly and needed our support. And so we were cooking, me and my husband were cooking for 3 generations, and my parents were not vegetarians. And I didn't want to just get them, like my dad would have been happy with like fast food every meal of the day, but I really wanted to give them nutrient dense food because they needed the health support. So I didn't want to just leave them to their own devices in terms of meat. And so I was getting food from a wonderful farm in Virginia, Honeybrook Farms in Virginia, in Culpeper. And my husband and I were learning to cook meat for the first time. And that was such a wonderful experiment and good fun. And it was another thing we could do during pandemic lockdown. And both of us switched at that time from being vegetarians to being omnivores. And so I had it in my mind, it's like once I got on the omnivore bandwagon and decided that meat was healthy after being a vegetarian for 30 years, then I decided carbs and gluten were the devil. And I did read a really good book. Have you read The Vegetarian Myth?
I have not. No.
Oh, it's a really good book, Lear Keith. And she talks about the misguided war on fat and how we were misled. So that fat piece is really important. The protein piece is really important. You can get that from meat. But if, for some people like myself, I was really worried that carbs were making us fat and that maybe we were allergic to gluten or something, but I had my son tested. He wasn't allergic to gluten. And I think by trying to avoid carbs and gluten, we were depriving ourselves of fiber. So I was, one of the things, these are such simple things and so embarrassing, but one of the things that changed my life, Todd, from what I learned from you, was Ezekiel bread and just realizing how important fiber is. And you've given me lots of other good suggestions. So if I had stayed with the Kelly Brogan smoothie, how could I have added fiber to that? What sort of, you've given me some suggestions for this. I think I forget most of them. So tell us how we can add fiber to our diet besides fruits and vegetables.
Well, I would say start with vegetables,
Yeah.
and I think apples are wonderful things to eat as well because they're high in fiber. They have quercetin. They
Apples
organic
have
apples.
quercetin?
Yes,
Really?
yes,
See, that's so amazing because, we spend so much money on these supplements and there's nothing wrong with that. But we can deliberately eat the foods that have these nutrients. So apples, organic apples with the skin, I'm assuming you were just
yes.
saying.
But the quercetin's not in the skin, but
Okay.
pectin's in the skin, which is also a beneficial nutrient.
Pectin?
Yes.
What is that?
Um, I don't remember exactly what it's beneficial for right off the
Okay.
top of my head, but it is something that is used for making jellies and jams. It's a thickening agent, but it has benefits for our health as well. And onions are another source of quercetin as well. Um, and something that sweetens up a meal, makes a savory meal a little sweeter. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So fiber, we start with our vegetables, fruits, onions, apples. What else can we use to get more fiber into our diet?
I'm a big fan of adding flax seeds, ground
Mhm.
flax seeds to
Everything.
different things. I'm okay with small quantities of oatmeal in the morning as
Mhm.
long as you have start with a steel cut oat and you add some almond butter to it or nuts to it, and you're not eating primarily the oats. You're eating, maybe it's 50% oats and you're eating some nuts and seeds with that. You can add flax seeds, chia seeds to that. You can
Mm.
add this is also for the vegetarians or vegans. You can add hemp hulls as well. Um, and hemp seed is a great source of fiber and protein and healthy oils.
Okay, so
Um,
like ground whole hemp seeds with the shells or hemp hearts?
the hearts, sorry, the
The heart.
hearts, not the hulls. I apologize there. Um, and I mean, those are the things that I think of. But I also, grains are not all bad for most people.
Yeah.
You get B vitamins from grains. So rice, brown rice, quinoa. Um, you know, if gluten is sort of a touchy issue, and I really discourage people from eating a lot of gluten but some people are able to eat small amounts of gluten without any problem. Um, but others, a drop of gluten or a speck of gluten will totally interfere with their health, sometimes headaches, sometimes digestive issues, other things. And I could go on and on, but there's lots of information on the risks of gluten on the internet. Some
Yeah,
of it
definitely.
over the top, but so mean, I think it's really focusing on getting your fiber from vegetables is really
Yeah.
what I recommend, number one, because you're getting fit. If you're eating 50% vegetables, um, you're going to get good fiber, and you can do other things like I just suggested to get other fiber, but I would focus on them, get it from vegetables.
Yeah. Very good advice. All right, we have a little question about flax seeds. I've read that ground flax seeds don't have the same nutritional value as whole flax seeds. Do you have a nutritional guidance for us on whether we should be doing ground up flax seeds or whole flax seeds?
It's important to grind the flax seeds before you use them,
Yeah.
or keep
Okay.
them ground in the freezer. The flax oxidizes pretty quickly, and the oils can oxidize. So um, it's best to grind them fresh before you use it. Is the ideal scenario. However, if you eat whole flax seeds, they're just going to go straight through your system unless you somehow grind them in a blender or have them in a smoothie or something like that. So you're not going to get virtually any nutritional value from a whole flax seed. That's the same with chia seeds as well. You want to let them swell up, and perfect world, they're ground in a blender or you're chewing them really well.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm going to go off on a tangent here
Yeah, please do.
about weight and chewing and kids. Starting with chewing, there are many hormones that stimulate our appetite. And when we are stressed, our body is telling us, watch out, something bad's happening. You better stock up on food.
Huh.
So when you don't get enough sleep, when you're stressed about something in your family or work,
Yep.
our natural tendency is to go to food.
Yep.
So doing things that manage stress and doing things that support sleep are critical for health and eating well, and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
grabbing the chips or grabbing the things that are unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when it comes to kids, one of the things is it's really about the parents learning to model healthy eating for their children,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching your son how, what's a healthy food, what's not a healthy food. But telling them is only a quarter of the work. It's showing them what you're doing. It's serving them foods that they can experiment with. And if they're young children, it's putting healthy foods on the plate. They may not eat them initially,
Right.
but they will experiment occasionally. And kids tend to have an intuition to eat what they need. So
Mm-hmm.
putting healthy foods, whether it's cooked mushrooms, whether it's nuts and seeds, and different types of vegetables and different types of fruits on their plate, let them experiment and eat. And it may take them 4 or 5 meals, maybe even longer, before they try that food. Or they may try it once, not like it, and then put it down for weeks, but they may try it again in another month. So allowing kids to experiment with food is really, really important, with healthy food. Um, and well, I'll leave it at that, and then
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. I've also heard that if you can get kids to eat something before they're 18 months, they they'll like it and they won't be picky eaters. I don't know. Do you know if that's true?
I
Is
don't
that a
know if
live
that's
tale?
true. I don't know if that's true, but kids, there are some studies, and I don't have them off the top of my head, about mothers when they're pregnant eating certain foods will be passed down to the kids. The kids, there is some relationship between the type of foods a mother eats and the type of foods young children crave. So
Mm-hmm.
eating well during pregnancy, even if it's, a time where you have nausea and things like that, it's
Yeah.
it's still it's still important um, to you think about your teaching your child how to eat when you're pregnant.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when I was pregnant with Sherwood, I did the Bradley method. Do you know about that?
No.
It's a very good prenatal program, for health. And you track what you eat. And as I recall, it was basically sort of a fat, protein, fiber type of thing, especially protein. They were very concerned about you tracking how much protein you eat every day. But it was a balanced diet with lots of things. And I've been very lucky. I sort of believe the before 18 months thing, because with Sherwood, as a vegetarian at that time, we ate lots of vegetables all the
Mhm.
time. And then, he was always hungry. And whenever I was cooking, I would, just give him raw vegetables to snack on. And he was, yeah, like to this day, he loves broccoli. He loves green vegetables. And now that we're like working towards, slimming down a bit, it does work. Like if you just keep making it available, they eventually will see it as normal. So
Mhm.
your theory of like not stressing your kids out by saying like, if you don't eat this, you can't do blah blah blah, but just
Right.
making it available. So I've gotten, by your good influence, gotten really into salads as the base of the meal. So like, if we're going to have grilled chicken, like why not grilled chicken on a salad? We used to eat tacos. That was one of the things that, such a simple meal, easy for parents to make and kids love it. Like why not taco salads? And so, just making every meal into a salad meal. And, for a while, Sherwood was like, well, I'll eat the salad, but I don't want it with blah, blah, blah. And he was he expressed some pickiness about integrating salad into meals. But, it just became such a part of the routine that now it's like he's really into it, especially if he can put whatever he wants on his salad meals. So
Yeah.
like meats and cheeses, and anything can go on a salad. And that's an easy way to get the 50%. get close to that 50%
Right.
balance. I'm not sure if we're perfect in that regard. All right, so we've talked about fiber, and I want to ask you one more question on the topic of fiber.
I'm
And
gonna.
then next, what you have
Well, I'll
something?
let you ask the question. I realized we forgot to talk about beans, which are a great source
Oh,
of
well, there you
fiber.
go. Yeah,
And for vegans and vegetarians, beans is a big piece of the diet, and they are wonderful for extra fiber and extra nutrients. You always just want to make sure you cook them fully, because undercooked beans can be upset your stomach and be a little bit toxic. So just want to make sure they're fully cooked.
right. Yeah, and the instructions to rinse the beans and soak the beans, that's also to remove things that are hard to digest, right?
That's correct. And if you're buying non-organic beans, we discourage that, because a lot of beans are sprayed with glyphosate or
Right,
Roundup
right.
as a desiccant. And there was, I forgot the man that we both know who said that hummus may be the most unhealthy food because it is frequently made with non-organic chickpeas and non-organic or GMO canola oil instead of olive oil, and it can cause some problems there. So always, if possible, since their beans are relatively inexpensive, getting organic beans or dried beans is a great way to go. Instant pots are fantastic for cooking beans and making them, early in the week, so you have them through the whole week. So I'll leave it at that. But oh no, and then on the fat, before we talked about the benefits of fat. You don't want to overdo fat, but you do
Right.
want to have fat, fiber, and protein in every meal. And we, as you know, as I've explained to you, I really discourage oils,
Right.
particularly canola oils or any refined oil. Very small amounts of olive oil are great. Olive oil has other benefits. Coconut oil can go either way. One thing we haven't talked about is how our DNA and how everybody's different. The coconut oil has been getting a lot of attention lately as being the healthy oil and helping people lose weight, being good for the brain. There's chemicals in coconut oil that help prevent Alzheimer's in some studies. And MCT oil, it's an extract of coconut oil, which some
Right.
people say has some benefit, but some people have a hard time with saturated fat. And some of that can be seen in DNA testing,
Okay.
while it's not medically diagnostic,
Mm-hmm.
it's can tell whether you have a tendency towards having a more difficult time with saturated fats and coconut oil, or whether you would be better, and whether you'd be better off with, say, using olive oil or eating more nuts and seeds. So just wanted to qualify the oils. And then when we talk about processed food, almost everything in a restaurant has sugar, vegetable oils, and excessive amounts of salt. So trying to reduce the amount you eat out, or choose restaurants where you can ask for things made without their sauces and creams and things like that, can be a real benefit to your health. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so the unhealthy oils, the unhealthy sugar, or extra sugars, and the extra salt is something to avoid.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So while we're on the topic of oils, that you really helped me on that as well. Um, I still do buy pre-made salad dressings. I have a friend who I eat with once a week, and we go to a protest together, and then we have lunch, and he makes the most delicious salad. And it's just so simple. It's you know, salad greens, few vegetables, but the way he dresses it is just oil and vinegar with a little salt, and it's delicious. and, so I know it's easy. I'm not there yet. I'm not making my own salad dressings, but you help me to identify the salad dressings in the store that have the healthy oils, because a lot of the times, you see a salad dressing and it appears to be an olive oil based salad dressing, but it's some olive oil with a lot of canola oil and soy oil or whatever else, all of these cheaper, less nutritious not as good for you oils. So yeah, so I need to get to the point where I'm making my own salad dressings. As you were talking about hummus, I was remembering when I was a young vegetarian and um, wanted to cook more of my food and eat not as much in the college mess hall, and realized how fun it was uh, to make hummus. To get cans of garbanzo beans and get a can of tahini and mix it all together. It's just like super, super easy. And I was just starting to fantasize about tahini salad dressings, which I haven't had in a while. At the stores, the ones that you buy that should be lots of tahini, they're not a lot of tahini,
Yeah, yeah.
It's so delicious. So maybe I will start making my own salad dressings now. Um,
I
okay,
think
so yeah, go ahead.
I'll give you a tip on the salad dressings.
Nice, thank you.
Making an oil and vinegar salad dressing is just like a teaspoon of balsamic vinegar, a teaspoon of the vinegar of your choice, red wine
Okay, so
vinegar.
1-to-1 oil and
1-to-1
vinegar.
oil, yeah, and a little bit of salt and pepper. Just mix it up a little bit, put it on. The trick is that you stir the salad in a bowl, in a big bowl. You mix it in because you only need a tiny bit of dressing to add that extra flavor. You can use lemon juice instead of vinegar as well. You do not need a lot of oil. You do not need a strong salad dressing. It's really just taking 3 minutes just to stir it. Sometimes I like to cut the lettuce so that the dressing gets all inside on both sides of all the lettuce.
Oh, I see. So you put your uncut lettuce leaves in, then you dress it, and then you cut it up for yourself, and that's when you mix all of the dressing in.
Yeah, and then serve it on the plates.
Yeah.
Or if you're eating it yourself, putting all your ingredients on top of that. And then mixing that up as well. But it doesn't take too. It's a habit thing. But the mixing is the key step.
Yeah, I think I'm also a little bit addicted to the store brand or store bought salad dressings because sometimes they have sugar in them. You helped me wean myself off of. I used to have candied nuts on every salad, sweetened cranberries on every salad. Like my salads were big junk food messes. So you helped me get rid of that, just because the main point of this fat, fiber, protein meal is it fills you up and you feel satisfied, and you're not having, like, when you eat sugary foods that don't have as much nutrition, you just keep craving, and it's an endless cycle that you can't get off that treadmill. But you power pack your meals with these nutrient dense ingredients, and then you feel satisfied and you're not always craving and wanting to snack.
Right. And
it works.
Some people, controlling blood sugar is a really key aspect of working with them as well. Other people can eat amazingly carb-rich things, and their blood sugar is not spiked in the ways that yours is, or in the ways that other people's are.
Not fair.
The point is that everybody is unique, and it's figuring out what works best for that individual person. And like we talked about, vegan versus keto versus paleo versus macrobiotic or whatever, there's all these different ways of eating, and everybody's unique, and you need, I think it's useful to be educated on what works for your system.
Yeah, definitely. So great topic raised in the chat here. Linda says, I had lots of food allergies that caused lots of inflammation. What's healthy for some is not healthy for me. So yeah, it really is individualized. But let's talk about that issue of inflammation, because this is another really good way to structure one's diet, is to avoid foods that cause inflammation and eat foods that reduce inflammation. So Todd, what's your best advice on inflammation and diet?
A healthy digestive system is going to be critical for anybody's health. And different people can process different foods different ways. We also have different populations of bacteria in our gut. And we've talked a lot about, sometimes when you feed them sugar, they crave more sugar and they send chemicals to the brain to tell you to eat more sugar. But when it comes to inflammation, anybody who's working with me who has inflammation issues, we're going to start with an elimination of at least gluten, dairy, and added sugars.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to experiment with that and have them track how they're feeling, how their elimination is going, and what they're actually eating. Because people don't always realize what they're eating contains gluten, or what they're eating contains added sugar or small amounts of dairy. And people with inflammation, that's the first step, is really doing a period of time. It depends on the person, depends on what their goals are, but eliminating dairy, gluten, and added sugar at a minimum. And then if they're not getting relief from that, sometimes we may do another elimination of maybe eggs or nuts, depending on the person. There may be some recommendations to talk to a doctor about, SIBO or some other things. I can educate on that.
And SIBO is what?
Small intestine bacteria overgrowth.
Okay.
And basically, your small intestine every night should sort of do a clean out. It should clean out the bacteria in it, and create an environment where it can absorb the nutrients from your food. Sometimes people who have SIBO have bacteria from their colon that's moved up into their small intestine, or they've gotten it in there from other sources, or there's some added inflammation in that area that is creating an environment for the bad bacteria. And there's a number of ways to get to the bottom of that. There's some medical approaches, there's some herbal approaches to experimenting with that or working with that as well.
So what are some examples of those approaches?
There is a pharmaceutical drug that your doctor can provide that is a antifungal drug. And there are herbs that I don't have the formula in my head, but that I think walnut hulls and some other ingredients, and I think a little bit of wormwood and things like that.
Interesting.
I have not worked with anybody specifically who has used that for SIBO, but there's literature out there of people using that for SIBO.
And what are some basic guidelines on anti-inflammatory foods, like things that we can all incorporate into our diet to fight inflammation?
Once you've done the gluten, dairy, and sugar, and gotten those out of your system, and allowed your gut to heal, and it's really healing the gut, because what happens is it's when there's damage to the gut, we absorb proteins from our food into our system, into our bloodstream, and those proteins can aggravate many things in the body and cause inflammation. So it's really focusing on healing the gut. So it's not just food specific is the point.
Right.
One person who has an unhealthy gut, almost anything they eat is going to cause inflammation. And somebody who's repaired their gut and done things that support the health of their gut, they might be able to eat things that they never were able to eat in the past. Most of the people who have gut issues, though, really probably want to stay away from gluten, because gluten does affect the gut. Some people have a better way of healing from gluten, but gluten is probably the number one thing to stay away from for people with unhealthy gut.
Well, the same person in the chat, Linda, said she changed her eating. I am now gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and have lost 42 pounds. And feels great. She's using Wellness Way herbs and supplements, so she's happy. It's worked for her. Let's just do 6 more minutes. That'll be an hour. But okay. Rachel Linden just brought up a great topic in the chat: fasting, and also activated charcoal. I was almost afraid to say that second part, because I have no idea what she's talking about, and I don't know if we can address it in 5 minutes. But let's at least address fasting today. And
Okay.
Unless activated charcoal is something that you know a lot about and want to talk about real quick.
Well, I'll say activated charcoal is something I use when I get food poisoning or something like that. It's one of the
Oh,
my first go-tos because it will absorb the toxins in the gut and help move them out. So
wow.
that's my what I use activated charcoal for. Other people will use activated charcoal as they're doing a fast or doing some detox. It helps move some of the toxins out of the system. Um,
Very cool.
Fasting is a broad word. It can
Yeah.
mean many different things to many different people.
Yeah.
Um, Going to a keto diet for some people is like fasting, and it actually is running your body on ketones versus carbs. And
Mhm.
there's some benefits to the brain as well as other parts of the body from doing that. There are for vegans and vegetarians, fasting is sometimes, in my opinion, is sometimes a way of getting the body to run on in a ketosis state because
Hmm.
it's hard to do a keto vegetarian diet. And there's health benefits from giving the body a break
Yeah.
from processing food. And this doesn't mean you stop eating everything. It's a fast needs to be custom designed for the person that is doing it. And not custom design, but there has to be some more education, which we can't really cover on this call. But there's lots of peer-reviewed studies on the benefits of fasting. There's benefits of cyclical eating. Some people eat during an 8-hour window of the day, and then one day a week they eat during a 12 or 14-hour window. There's more formal fasts that involve juices or some supplements. There's soups fasts. There's a number of different ways to give the body a break.
Mhm.
I will say though that anybody who's stopping eating for any reason to do a fast or something like that, you have to be doing things that keep the elimination pathways open because
Huh.
when your body is fasting and not or it's starting to burn fat for its source of energy and sometimes protein, which is not good, but if it's burning fat,
Mhm.
it's going to send toxins that are in that fat to be eliminated through the digestive system. So you want to make sure your colon is moving and things are moving through your system because you don't want your body to reabsorb any of the toxins that it's eliminating. And
Hmm.
that's true in general because there's toxins in our food, there's toxins in our environment that we absorb, and our body has an excellent detox system. So we have to just keep the digestive system moving appropriately. Should be having 2 to 3 bowel movements a day, at least one minimum. So I'll leave it at that.
Wow, Todd, you mentioned we've been working together for a year and we've just talked for an hour, but I feel like there's so much more to learn. And I so appreciate you joining us today to discuss these things. Like I said, this is the beginning of our broadcast related to our Farms Not Pharma campaign. So if you all have suggestions for people that I could interview on this topic, you can email me about that, alexis@organicconsumers.org. And Todd, I hope that we can have you back again. I hope I progress. I hope we can, already I have to say, like, I've lost weight. I'm happier. I'm less stressed. And I've been able to move forward on health goals with your guidance. So I got certified to teach yoga, and now I'm teaching yoga to friends for free, on the side, just so that I can do it twice a week. And you've been really helpful to me in so many ways. So I really appreciate everything you've done for me and for my family, and for being here with the members of the Organic Consumers Association today. So I hope that we'll continue to bring Todd to you all so you guys can pepper him with these great questions. And thanks to everybody in the chat who shared your stories of your diet, your healing, your health journey. Really excited to continue with all of you on Farms Not Pharma.
Well, thank you so much, Alexis. And if people want to work with me or learn more about me, they can go to toddwickersham.com and they can fill out a free questionnaire there. for a free strategy session. There's a questionnaire that they can do that and schedule a strategy session to potentially see if working together is a good thing. So
awesome. And I definitely want to have you back to discuss DNA testing, because that's something you and I haven't quite explored yet, but we're going to. And when I start on that part of my journey with you, I'd like to share that with the group. And yeah, so whole new topic. All right,
fantastic.
so I'll see you next time with that.
Great. Well, thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.